Welcome to the Human Touch Interact Studios weekly 30-minute conversation. And we're today would love for all the folks who are part of the Interact team or extended team, give us a wave. I'm not going to introduce everyone for the sake of time, but what I do want to do is acknowledge that as we have had a couple of times, we begin this call with heavy hearts. We're thinking about the people in Louisiana who are being impacted by Hurricane Laura, and we're saddened, troubled, frustrated by yet another police shooting of a Black man, Jacob Blake. It's hard to find the words at times like this to reflect how we're thinking, feeling, and what we must do. And in a remarkable show of courage, Jacob Blake's mother, Julia Johnson, found the words. So we'd like to begin with just a short clip of her message to our country and to our world, and then Jess and Coach McNeely will take it from there.
So I'm really asking and encouraging everyone in Wisconsin and abroad to take a moment and examine your hearts. Citizens, police officers, firemen, clergy, politicians, do Jacob justice on this level and examine your hearts.
Yes.
We need healing. As I pray for my son's healing, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I also have been praying, even before this, for the healing of our country. A house that is against each other cannot stand. To all of the police officers, I'm praying for you and your families. To all of the citizens, my Black and brown sisters and brothers, I'm praying for you. I believe that you are an intelligent being just like the rest of us. Everybody. Let's use our hearts, our love, and our intelligence to work together to show the rest of the world how humans are supposed to treat each other. America is great when we behave greatly.
Examine your heart and do good. Powerful words, and today's guest has examined his heart and he has done greater. Coach William McNeely has undergone a double lung transplant and afterwards transitioned from a job in corporate America to work and following his passion, helping others with DoGreater Charlotte. And he joins us today to tell us about the work DoGreater Charlotte is doing in our community, as well as his journey through the double lung transplant, how that has changed him, and how he is always looking forward. Welcome, Coach McNeely. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me today. It's an exciting time, for me and our organization, and I appreciate the opportunity to kind of tell you guys about what we're doing in my journey throughout the last 3 or 4 years as well.
We're so thankful to have you spend your time with us. So where does the nickname Coach come from?
Coach, really, I've been, involved in youth sports for a number of years. I've coached my son in football, who is now playing at Campbell University. And just over the last, 15 years or so, people have started calling me Coach Mac. And I coach high school sports as well at South Mac, and it just kind of stuck. And so, people continue to call me Coach McNeely or Coach Mac or Coach, and, it just stuck.
Yeah, I think it's an inspirational name because coaching implies a lot more than just, sir, hello. You had a massive health event. You had a double lung transplant, and that kind of led you in this transitional journey from your job in corporate America to following your passion doing DoGreater Charlotte. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, really, back in 2015, as I was working in corporate America, I worked for Apple and a number of other educational technology companies, and was doing great, running around, doing corporate stuff and coaching football with my kids, seeing them grow. And back in 2015, I had a diagnosis of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and it came out of nowhere. It was like, oh, what is this? And, one day I just started feeling sick and slow and lethargic. And, after a while, they finally realized that, you've got fibrosis, your lungs are scarred. And from March 2016 until 2019, I one day working and traveling, the next day carrying around a oxygen tank 24/7. So it went from, great life to dragging a tank behind me 24/7. So it was something that was pretty rapid and changed my life drastically.
It's a drastic shift, and that will change your perspective. And so what about that kind of made you follow the path of leaving or transitioning eventually from your corporate job into more of a community service type job?
Well, I mean, when something like that happens, you have to reevaluate your process and how you move forward. And for me, it was like, okay, what was next? What am I being prepared for? And so I looked at the obstacles and the challenges as a preparation for me in the next phase of my life. And see, at that point, I didn't necessarily know. I believe from my standpoint that I would come out of that. I didn't know my next 3 years would be, continuing to carry an oxygen tank behind me, and, not one tank, but 2 tanks, and then 3 tanks. And so I went from, not even, being able to kind of somewhat exist to not even being able to walk 20 feet without having oxygen. And then in the beginning of, or end of 2018, and as I moved into 2019, it was, a sense of, well, this is it. We can't do anything else for you. You now have to go and be evaluated for a lung transplant, because that's the next step for you. And as I went to Duke and back in the first of 2019, and started the evaluation process, my condition continued to go down. And within a couple of weeks there, I was literally on my deathbed, and I walked into the doctor's office, and he literally looked at me and said, if we don't do something for you in the next 2 weeks, we don't know what will happen. And as I experienced that, I said to myself, okay, is he telling me that I have 2 weeks to live? I didn't necessarily process it as most people would process it. What I did was, because I believe the preparation for me throughout the 3 years was really, positioning me to kind of deal with this. And I said to the doctor, I looked at him, I said, okay, well, 2 weeks means that we have 2 weeks to figure out how to deal with this. And so my entire process, my thinking was, okay, this is not over. I've got 2 weeks to figure this out. And this was actually literally on a Thursday where they told me this. And by Saturday, that weekend, I was being called in for a double lung transplant. And so within 2 days, I was being called in. And that Saturday, I went under. They cut my chest open, took my damaged lungs out, put 2 new lungs in. And by that Sunday, I was breathing again on my own, breathing at a 98% saturation rate. And within the next week, I was out of the hospital. Within the next 2 weeks, I was back in rehab. And within 3 weeks, which was Memorial Day last year, I was back in Charlotte. They said it would take 6 months for me to recover from the lung transplant and to get back to actually being productive. And within 6 weeks, I was back in Charlotte. And within that 1 week, I was developing DoGreater Foundation. And so it went that quickly. But I think, one of the things for me was the preparation of how, how the challenges and the obstacles prepared me to propel myself forward. It was literally, as I looked at the oxygen that I was traveling with, I literally looked at it as the thing that propelled me toward my purpose. And so as I finally started to come out of that, I said to myself, okay, what is next? What is the next thing that I think I can be involved in to give back to the community? And again, I had been in corporate America. I had done the types of things that most people think are successful. I had the house, the car, the kids, I had all of that, and had worked in nonprofit organizations, through churches, on boards of nonprofit organizations, but I still thought it wasn't enough for me. And very vividly and clearly it said, I wrote down this statement on a sheet of paper. It was very clear. It said, commit to doing something greater that will continue to give when you are no longer able to give. And I had no idea where that came from, and all of a sudden I said, okay, what can I do to make a greater impact on the lives of people? Because I believe now my existence was to continue to impact the lives of others. And that's where DoGreater came from. It was the commitment to make an impact on the community. And not only that, but to give back to the underserved and under-resourced community as it relates to creative applications and creative technology that I thought these kids and youth were not having experiences with. So it came from all of that. It came from that challenge, and it was birthed from there.
And how important is it for, you say you're giving the resources to communities, underserved communities, so they have more access to creative technology? And how important is that for these communities to have that access today?
Well, it's extremely important. I mean, we think about technology, and we think about the technology being ubiquitous across our entire community. I mean, I'm sitting around 4 or 5 different types of computers and technology and all of that, but some in our community don't have access to all the things that we do. And one of the biggest challenges as well is, even though we might have access to some of that technology, we're not being taught from a creative perspective the types of soft skills that are needed in the corporate environment today. The creativity, the collaboration, all the types of things that a lot of the employers are looking for in their new employees. And so, what I sat one day in an Apple store, and I was there. I had a lot of time before my surgery, so I'm sitting there getting these skills and honing my skills. And I'm thinking, this is the type of things that need to be taken into the community, not inside the store. And so what we decided to do was to develop a mobile technology lab. I mean, literally take a FedEx truck and convert that into a technology lab filled with iPads and Wi-Fi and projectors and TVs, and literally take that into the community and teach these types of creative applications, the entrepreneurial classes, the technology and STEM classes to the communities, and provide that creative bit to it through the lens of the types of things that they're interested in, sports, fashion, shoe technology, helmet technology, as in football, as I was teaching a lot of the kids. And so we wanted to provide this type of creative teaching through the lens of the things that the kids are excited about, to get them excited about being entrepreneurs or being contributors into the community. And so we found a lot of success doing that through the what we call the mobile technology lab. So it's extremely important to provide access, not only in our schools and in some of the community areas, within Charlotte, but to take this directly to the kids as well.
Yeah, and so many kids, learning is always amplified when they're passionate about something, and oftentimes these aren't subjects that are taught in school, and so they don't have the access to it, and it could be making a world of difference in their education level to begin with. And speaking of CMS, they've made the move to all virtual learning, which is causing a lot of gaps for especially the underserved and underprivileged community to actually be on the same level with resources as many of their peers. So how is DoGreater kind of closing that gap, or what are they doing to assist, or planning to do to assist, using your mobile DoGreater unit?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, obviously, we created a mobile, what we call a mobile distribution platform for our content, and we take that into the communities. But when you have a mobile technology lab, you can't put 15 kids inside a truck at this point. with the, COVID and the coronavirus. So how do you deal with that? What are the next phases for that? So what we decided to do was, we have a truck still, with Wi-Fi and hotspots and a variety. So it's literally a mobile hotspot that we can take into a community. And now you have these, a vehicle that can provide internet access to over 100 people, with our technology that's actually inside the truck. So, in the next couple of weeks, we actually kind of beefed up our technology within the truck. And now we're actually going to take these out, park it in the cul-de-sac and say, hey, for the folks who are in this community that don't have access, here's access, jump on board. And then the other thing that you look at is, how do you start to create environments where there are creative spaces inside communities that can provide the type of co-learning and collaborative environment that can enhance the learning for these kids. And so we're partnering with a church in Camp Green neighborhood, which is off Moorhead and Wilkerson Boulevard, to turn 4,000 square feet of space there into a creative co-learning space for kids. And we have the ability to kind of create a space that can be developed from a social distance standpoint, and can be flexible enough to provide extended opportunities for kids who might need extra support from teachers, mentors, and creative advisors that we bring to work with these kids. And so we feel as though, the CMS is doing the best that they can with the resources that they have, but the community has to come together now and provide for the gaps. And that's what we want to do, because, growing up on the west side of Charlotte myself, and being exposed to the type of technology that I thought that compelled me to what I am today, I think we need to provide that same type of access and exposure to some of these communities who might not have access to that. And so that's what we're trying to do going forward, and we're excited about that as well.
So you've been able to combine this career in technology with a calling, and that's something a lot of people want to do, but maybe don't know exactly how to do it. So do you have any advice for people trying to do something like that, combine that calling with, an actual job?
Yeah, really, I think for me, I think even before the transplant, and I really had this epiphany, but even several years before that, I started going through a process of, okay, I'm 50, I'm approaching, what else is there? What's the meaning of life we all think about? And I looked at the underpinnings of what I had done over the years. And, I've been involved in a lot of educational technology companies. I love to coach. I love youth. I love kids. And I looked at, okay, what is the main thing there that weaves all this together? And one of the things is that I found that I love to help people reach their full potential. Everything that I did was all about potential, whether it would be in my corporate environment or whether it would be with kids, or whether it be, I took 3 years out of corporate environment and taught middle school as well. So there was a common thread there, and it was about enhancing the potential of anybody who I would come in contact with. So I started studying about purpose and a variety of different things, and understanding your why with Simon Sinek and all this type of things. And I said, okay, what is it of where it exists? And I said, here's what I think. I think passion moves you forward, but purpose fuels the impossible. And so what I looked for was, okay, passion, here's my passion is helping people understand their full potential. But I need to start focusing more specifically on my purpose, because that's going to allow me to do the impossible. And so I said, what is my why? And I came up with a statement. I mean, it was like, okay, if somebody asked me why I exist, what am I going to say? And I said, look, I exist to help people reach their full potential through leadership, vision, and focus, so that they can do greater things to impact the lives of other people. And that's what I said. I said, if somebody asked me why I exist, that's what I'm going to say. And so it started to allow me to change my perspective on things, because I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to do the impossible. And I always tell my kids, I said, ideas are a dime a dozen, but until you move those things into action, until you move those things to impact, that's when it become important. And so that's what I want to do. It was all about ideas to impact. And so what impact could I make from a physical standpoint? That's where the truck came from. And that's where we do what we're doing now with the physical space. But I think I tell everybody is to find that, it's almost like everybody find your why. Well, that's kind of difficult to do a lot of times. I mean, we say that and find your purpose and find your why. It's somewhat difficult to do. And I don't want people to wait until they have a traumatic experience like I did from a lung transplant to sit down and say, okay, what is that? I want you to start before that. Get to the point where you have to. And you got doctor tells you 2 weeks, you got 2 weeks to live. And you start to say, okay, what is that? We have to start looking at it now. And it was quite clear to me as I was going through my challenge with the transplant. I was doing rehab, and I was doing after the transplant, you have to go through 3 weeks of rehab. Well, actually a lot longer than that. I went through 3 weeks. But I'm sitting there, and because of all the medicine I take, my immune system is way down. I'm on immunosuppressants. I take about 30 pills a day to keep me going, for my body to say, okay, I've got to deal with these new lungs that you have. And so as I was sitting there, I started, your balance is off because of all the drugs that you're on. And so my physical therapist is telling me, you got to get your balance back. You got to get your equilibrium, if I can say it back. And so I'm sitting there walking this little foam piece, and I'm trying to stay on this foam piece. And I'm looking down at my feet, and the physical therapist is saying, I'm falling off every time. And the physical therapist is telling me, he's saying, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm trying to walk forward. He said, no, you can't do that. You can't look at where you are. You have to look at where you're going. And he said, focus on that clock on the back wall, and just look at that clock and start walking. And I did. I started walking. I looked at that, and I didn't fall off. I walked directly through the path. And so what I learned from that is that, when you're going through these challenges and you're trying to find out your purpose and your why, you have to look ahead, not in the situation that you're in. You have to look at where you're going and what the opportunities are for you, so that impossible can be accomplished. And I never thought I could come out of that scenario. I mean, it was some dark days. I mean, don't get it wrong. I mean, I went through some dark periods as I started to go through this process about, am I going to make it? Am I going to come out of this alive? I mean, am I going to, the statistics based around the survival rate for 5 years is 50%. Am I going to be here in 5 years? And so you start to think about those things and the type of impact that you have to make now. And I think that's what fuels the impossible, that when you start to find out what that is. And for me, it's about helping kids reach that full potential. The more and more I see that can be successful, that can understand how to make a contribution to the environment, to the community, the more youth that I can set on the right path. Not only youth, but adults as well. I mean, I think that's why I am still here, and that I knew that I would make it past that 2 weeks in order for us to make an impact on the folks that I come in contact with every day.
Yeah, it's spoken like a true coach. So we talked a little bit about, it's interesting, having had gone through your double lung transplant, you had to put into place a lot of the practices that people are having to live with right now for COVID, just really being safe, avoiding crowds, and a little bit about how you just, you never know what someone's going through. Looking at you today, you would have no idea you had a double lung transplant and how different things might have been about a year ago for you. So can you speak a little bit to that, on how, maybe giving each other a little grace sometimes?
Yeah, it's you really never know. I mean, you don't know what people are dealing with. I was running around with pulmonary fibrosis for a long time, and I didn't even know it. And once it started to flare up, it fell off a cliff pretty quickly. And I'm considered disabled now. If I look at my, people would say, oh, from a legal standpoint, I'm considered disabled. But I tell you, it's you have to make sure that you are cognizant and understand and have some empathy about what's going on. People would look at me when I was pulling it was funny one day, because I was literally carrying an oxygen tank, and I was, I would do things. I mean, literally, I would have oxygen tanks, carrying around 2 oxygen tanks, and I was still coaching football. I would literally pull the oxygen tank on the football field and coach and pull it off at the football field. I was letting nothing stop me. But people would look at me and say, oh, woe is, look at him. He's so pitiful. He's carrying around oxygen tanks. I'm like, look, guys, I understand why I'm here. I understand the impact that I'm making. Yes, I am carrying around 2 oxygen tanks, but trust me, I understand where I'm going. And so I'm in a much better position than a lot of you guys are. You might not understand why you're here and what your purpose is and what the impact you're going to make, but don't feel sorry for me. I understand what the impact that I am making. And I will continue to do that as long as I'm here. So don't look at people just because of the fact that there might be, have a physical impairment or might have even some mental issues or even some things that you might not see. Some of those folks are in the best position that they can be in, and then the folks who don't look perfectly normal are worse off than they are. And so I think when you start to look at the situation that we're in from a COVID perspective, this is just like the situation that I went through when I was going through, all of a sudden I had pulmonary fibrosis. It was like, okay, how do we get through this? How do I deal with this? And how do I have some empathy as I get through this? I mean, when I came out of the transplant, they told me, wear a mask, don't be in crowds, watch what you eat, drink sterile water, don't go to any buffets. I mean, I was dealing with that for the last 4 years, even as, before we, got into this scenario. And so I was used to it. And so, as everybody has to do this now, I think what you just have to do at this point is just to have some empathy. And then to look outside of this scenario, look outside of your circumstance. I always look as we go through this, one of the reasons why the physical space started to materialize for us is because we were looking past the situation that we were in. What will propel us to be better situated after this is over? When I worked for Apple back in the early 2000s, we were dealing with a recession period. Actually, it was literally right after 9/11 with what happened there. And doing 9/11 and that situation that happened after, we were literally developing the iPod, which would literally go on to change the entire music industry. So what we were doing was innovating through the challenge and through the obstacle. And how would we come out of this taking advantage of the small creases of opportunity that would reveal themselves as we go through this process. And so we were preparing for that. And so what I tell people now is that, okay, what are the small creases of opportunity that are showing themselves now? They're going to propel you to be more successful when this is over. And so as a nonprofit and as a startup, that's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out, okay, what's going to make us better better prepared to propel ourselves to make a bigger impact when this is over. And so that's what I think what I try to preach myself and try to be prepared to do. And hopefully as we come out of this at the first of the year, we'll be propelled to do that.
And how can people help DoGreater, Charlotte, if people want to contribute?
Well, we're in a fundraising capacity right now. We believe, we wholeheartedly believe that this physical space that we call the Creative Lab at Shiloh, which is Shiloh Institutional Baptist Church right there in Camp Green, is something that's much needed in our community. And so we're taking donations to convert that space, to renovate that space. It's going to take us about $250,000 to convert that space. This month, we're at about $30,000 of that, which I haven't even announced yet. We actually will announce that tomorrow. August is Black Philanthropy Month for Black-led and Black supporting and benefiting organizations. And so we have raised $30,000 this month toward providing the renovation of the Creative Lab. And so we welcome everybody to go to our website, DoGreater.org, and commit to that, providing that type of space. We're also looking for volunteers and mentors and advisors that we can bring in to mentor our students, not only in technical applications like coding and creative applications like Photoshop, photography, video production, music production, and things like that that we focus on, entrepreneurship as well, business owners, but just on character development. I mean, we have 5 character development principles that we teach to our kids, and we would love to train folks based around those development principles to have you model that to our kids as well. So volunteers and financial support as well. So we're excited about what the future holds for our organization.
It sounds like you're doing some amazing work. We are about to wrap up, but before we do, we had one quick question from Sean King, and it's about your teaching career. And he was wondering, how did you manage the transition from corporate life to your teaching passion? In particular, he would appreciate what lessons learned or best practices you can share.
Yeah, I went into teaching. There was a couple of reasons why I went into teaching. One, because I was so involved with youth, and you know, I had volunteered at a ton of schools, and so I had been in the classroom. And then for my corporate experience in education and technology with Apple, my focus was creating educational solutions for school systems. And so I was enamored with the fact of providing those type of solutions in the classroom that excited kids. And so taking all of that experience, I decided to go into CMS and teach in the Career and Technology Education Department, and I taught entrepreneurship and computer applications. But I came in with the focus on taking my corporate experience and teaching that and incorporating that within the curriculum of Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. And so I did lean startup principles, entrepreneurship principles that were taught in Silicon Valley. I taught them inside of the classroom, and I had the leeway with my principal to be able to do that. So I didn't really follow the CMS curriculum per se. I took a lot of the things that I learned in the corporate environment and incorporated that into my teaching within the classroom, and the kids loved that. I mean, they loved the fact we did Shark Tank. We did a whole bunch of the type of things that were happening within the startup community. And so I learned a lot from that. And so I took those same things that I learned within the classroom, and we do a lot of that now within the content that we teach within the DoGreater curriculum. And so I would say, if I was still back in the school system, I would say working within the confines of what CMS of the curriculum there, but then incorporate all types of things within the real world, because that's what kids are going to see when they come out. They're going to be exposed to the real world, and what the real world presents to them is a lot different than what they're learning in the classroom.
Sure is. And it'll help them figure out their why. And I think we're all going to try to figure out our why now and look forward. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. If nobody else has any other questions, we have another Interact Human Touch series coming up next Thursday. Stay tuned for news on that. But William, we really thank you. You've coached us all a little bit this morning and inspired us all to look forward, find our why. And we appreciate you spending time with our Interact family.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time, and it's always good to meet a lot of new people that are doing some great things in the community.
Thank you. All right, everybody. That wraps it up for today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.